Imagine this. You're halfway across the world, serving your country in a brutal war. Every day is a fight for survival, each moment uncertain. Then, one night, you receive a text message that shatters everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and loyalty. Your wife, your best friend, your partner, has divorced you while you're in combat. And not only that, she's drained your joint account. How would you react? Would you feel betrayed, angry, or would you find a way to rebuild from the wreckage? This is exactly what happened to Alex Parker, a soldier stationed in the Middle East, who returned home to find the life he had worked so hard for reduced to ashes. But in a world where everything feels lost, Alex is determined to piece his life back together, no matter the cost. This isn't just a story about a failed marriage. It's about resilience, redemption, and the power of second chances. It's about facing your worst fears head-on and refusing to let them define you. Alex's journey isn't just about rebuilding his life. It's about discovering who he truly is and what he's willing to fight for, no matter the odds. As secrets unfold, emotions run high, and the weight of his past threatens to tear him apart. Alex must decide. Can love survive betrayal? And can a broken heart ever truly heal? In the end, it's not just about getting back to where he was, but finding something deeper, something more meaningful than he ever thought possible. This is a story of love, loss, and the power of resilience. And it's only just begun. The sound of the jet engines roaring above me felt like a distant memory now. But as I stood on the tarmac at the Fort Bragg military base in North Carolina, the reality of what was happening hit me harder than the weight of my backpack. I was about to board that plane, heading straight into the chaos of a foreign land, leaving behind the one person I thought I could always count on. My wife, Lily. It was supposed to be a temporary goodbye. Just a few months. 6 months at most. I could do that, right? 6 months. I'd survived longer deployments before, but this time felt different. There was an unease I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the way Lily had looked at me before I left. Something distant in her eyes. Or maybe it was the fact that, over the last few weeks, we'd barely spoken without getting into some kind of argument. I shoved the thoughts aside. I couldn't afford distractions. I was heading to Afghanistan, a place where lives were lost with no warning, no reason. I couldn't afford to think about anything other than the mission. My comrades around me were saying their goodbyes to their families, some with tears in their eyes, some trying to hold it together with forced smiles. But we all knew the reality. The chance of returning in one piece was slim. As I boarded the plane, I tried to focus on the positive. I told myself I'd be back soon, that everything would be fine. After all, we'd been together for nearly 5 years, and Lily had always been my rock, the love of my life. We had our issues, sure, but who didn't? No relationship was perfect. We'd get through this, just like we always did. The flight was long, endless almost, but I found solace in the messages Lily had sent me before I left. They were warm, full of love and support. She'd promised me she'd keep the home fires burning while I was gone. I believed her. I had to. The next few days were a blur of sand, heat, and the constant hum of tension. Afghanistan wasn't kind to anyone. We were stationed at a small base in the middle of nowhere, and I was thrown into the chaos immediately. There was no time to breathe. The missions were relentless. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. But I found comfort in the fact that I could still hear from Lily. She sent texts and emails regularly. At least I knew she was still there, holding down the fort, waiting for me to come home. But it wasn't just her messages that kept me going. It was the idea of what awaited me back home. A house we had just bought together in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we'd planned our future. I'd worked hard to give her everything she wanted. A comfortable life, security, and all the love I could offer. I had visions of coming back and picking up where we left off, taking her out to our favorite restaurant, going on weekend hikes, and just being together like we always had been before I left. But the longer I was there, the more I started to notice something odd. Lily's messages became less frequent, more distant. At first, I thought it was just her adjusting to life without me around. Maybe she was busy, or maybe she just needed some space. But as the days turned into weeks and then into months, I started to get that nagging feeling again. Something wasn't right. She would respond to my texts with short, Curt answers. Her once warm, loving words now felt like they were coming from someone else. I tried to ignore it. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, war had a way of messing with your head. I had to focus. But it was hard. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her. But when I saw her name on the screen, it felt like a stone dropped in my chest. Then, one day, everything changed. It was around noon when I got a message from Lily. The time difference was always a bit of a hassle, but I had gotten used to it. I was sitting with my squad mates in the mess hall, trying to enjoy a rare moment of peace, when I checked my phone. It was a text from Lily. The message was brief, almost too brief. I think we need to talk. I've made a decision. My heart skipped a beat. What decision? I quickly typed a response. Lily, what's going on? Please talk to me. But the message I received in return wasn't what I expected. It wasn't the message I was ready to hear. I've thought this through, and I don't think I can do this anymore. I want a divorce. I stared at the screen, the words blurring in front of my eyes. Divorce. The word echoed in my mind like a bomb going off, ripping everything apart. My hand began to shake, and I suddenly couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Not while I was here in a foreign country, fighting for my life. Not when I had given everything to this marriage, to her. I hit call, desperate to hear her voice, to understand what had happened, but it went straight to voicemail. Again and again, I tried texting, pleading with her to explain, but her responses were cold, distant, like she had already made up her mind. There was no going back. Hours later, my worst fears were confirmed. I logged into our bank account, only to find that our joint savings, every cent we'd saved together, was gone, completely drained. Every penny vanished without a trace. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My mind was spinning, and the room around me felt like it was closing in. She didn't just divorce me. She took everything. The money, our future, our life together. It was all gone, and I was left with nothing but the weight of her words. I don't know how I got through that day, or the next, or the next. Each moment felt like an eternity. The only thing I could focus on was surviving the hell I was in. But even that seemed insignificant now. I was losing everything back home, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. The war had taken so much from me. But this felt like the final blow. The days after the text came through were a blur. The sand, the heat, the constant tension. It all faded into the background as the devastation of Lily's words consumed me. I couldn't focus on anything. I tried to throw myself into missions, but my mind kept drifting back to that damn text message. I want a divorce. The words echoed in my head like a cruel chant. It was all I could think about, all I could feel. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her, but it never was. It was just more bad news from the front lines, more distant, impersonal notifications. The world around me was a war zone, but this was something I couldn't fight. I kept replaying the last few months in my mind. Had I missed something? Had there been signs? It was hard to tell. We'd been through tough times before, like when I was stationed in Fort Hood, Texas, and we'd had a rough patch. But back then, we worked through it. Lily was always the calm in my storm. She understood me better than anyone. I thought we were stronger than this. But now, with every passing hour, it felt like I was losing her piece by piece. The messages from her had become infrequent, but I thought nothing of it at first. She had a life of her own, after all, a life that didn't revolve around me, a life she needed to live while I was away. But then, it started to feel like she was avoiding me. I'd send a text, and sometimes it would take days for her to respond. I tried not to be paranoid, tried to tell myself I was overthinking it. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The day the text came, I was on a routine patrol, trekking through the unforgiving Afghan desert. The sun was merciless, beating down on us as we made our way through the rugged terrain. I tried to shake the unease gnawing at me. My squad mates joked around, but I wasn't listening. My phone was the only thing I could focus on. I pulled it out, hoping for a message from her. Instead, the one message that appeared shattered everything. I think we need to talk. I've made a decision. I stared at those words for what felt like an eternity, my heart racing in my chest. What decision? What could she have possibly decided without me? I quickly typed back, "Lily, what's going on? Please, just tell me." But the reply that came sent shockwaves through me. "I want a divorce." My stomach dropped, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Divorce? After everything? After plans we'd made, the promises we'd shared, the house we just bought in Raleigh? I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't prepared for this. I called her immediately, desperate for answers. The phone rang, but it went straight to voicemail. I left message after message, but none of them were returned. I couldn't understand it. She had always been there for me, always been my anchor. Why was she doing this? Why was she pulling away so completely? I tried to tell myself it was just a rough patch, that maybe she was just overwhelmed. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. She had already made up her mind. I felt in my gut that sickening realization that the woman I loved was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The relentless desert heat felt suffocating, and my thoughts kept spiraling. I tried calling again, hoping for some kind of explanation, but there was nothing. I sent more messages, more texts, but all I received were cold, curt replies. It was like I didn't even know the person on the other end of the phone. She wasn't the woman I married, the woman who would wait for me after every deployment, who would hold me when I came home, who would look at me like I was the only person in the world. When I woke up the next day, I was determined to get answers. I wasn't going to let this go without understanding what had happened. I logged into our joint bank account, knowing full well that Lily had access to it. What I saw nearly made my heart stop. Our savings, every cent we had worked so hard for, was gone, completely drained. I couldn't believe it. The account that had been our safety net, the account that held all our future plans, was empty. She had taken it all. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this? The woman I had trusted, the woman I had given everything to, was gone. She had taken everything, and now I was left with nothing. I tried to call her again, and again, but there was no response. The same message played over and over. The person you're trying to reach is unavailable. Each time I heard that message, it felt like a punch to the gut. She was avoiding me, shutting me out completely, and I couldn't even tell why. I felt like I was losing my grip on everything. The war was already taking so much from me, but this was worse. This wasn't just the loss of a battle or the death of a comrade. This was the loss of my life, my marriage, my future. All the things I had fought for, all the things I believed in, were slipping away from me like sand through my fingers. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was helpless. There was nothing I could do. I was thousands of miles away, caught in a foreign land, unable to do anything but watch my life fall apart. My heart ached with the thought of it. How had we gotten here? How had she become a stranger to me? I tried to focus on the mission. I had to. I had to push the thoughts of Lily out of my head. But it wasn't that easy. Every mission, every firefight, felt like I was being pulled in two different directions. On one hand, I was a soldier, a man at war. On the other, I was a husband, a man who had been abandoned, betrayed. I couldn't escape it. By the time the mission ended, I was physically drained, but emotionally, I was hollow. I hadn't heard from Lily in days. And with every passing hour, I felt like I was losing her even more. Maybe I had lost her for good. I was left with one bitter truth. I was at war, fighting for my life, while she was fighting to destroy the life we had built together. The days that followed felt like I was living in a nightmare. Every morning, I woke up to the heat of the Afghan desert seeping into my skin, and every night, I lay awake in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, lost in my thoughts. The mission was the only thing that kept me from falling apart completely. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping through my fingers. I had joined the army to serve my country, to fight for something bigger than myself. But now it felt like I was fighting a different kind of war, one that I didn't understand. The woman I loved, the one person I thought I could count on, had turned her back on me without warning. She'd taken our savings, drained the joint account, and left me stranded in the middle of a war zone, with nothing but my thoughts and the weight of her betrayal hanging over me. I spent hours staring at my phone, hoping for some sign, some explanation. But each time I checked, there was nothing. No messages, no calls, nothing. It was like she had completely disappeared from my life. My squad mates noticed the change in me. They could tell something was off, but I wasn't about to share my personal turmoil with them. They had their own demons to fight, their own battles to face. I didn't want to burden them with my problems. But still, it was impossible to ignore the way I felt, like I was slowly being erased from the life I thought I had built with Lily. I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. I had to fight back. Somehow, I had to understand why she had done this. It didn't make sense. Lily wasn't the type of person to just throw everything away without a reason. There had to be something I was missing. And then a thought hit me like a ton of bricks. What if she wasn't the one who wanted this? What if someone else had convinced her to make that decision? What if she was being manipulated? I had no way of knowing for sure, but I couldn't shake the suspicion. The woman I married wouldn't have just given up on me. She wouldn't have destroyed everything we'd built together without a fight. I had to get to the bottom of this. But how? I knew I couldn't solve this problem from halfway around the world. I couldn't make sense of any of it from the confines of my military base in Kandahar. But I wasn't going to sit idly by while she tore apart everything we had. I had to act, even if that meant finding a way to reach out to her, even if that meant putting everything on the line. The first step was simple. I had to get home. It wasn't easy. Military deployments don't exactly make it easy for soldiers to leave when they want. The chain of command was strict, and getting approval for a leave of absence wasn't going to be a walk in the park. But I was determined. I couldn't stay in Afghanistan knowing that Lily was out there, doing God knows what, and I was powerless to stop it. I filed a request for leave, making sure to cite personal reasons. I didn't go into detail. There was no need. All I needed was a chance to return home, to figure out what had happened, to speak to her face-to-face and hear the truth from her own lips. I wasn't going to let her hide behind text messages any longer. It took what felt like an eternity for my request be approved. But eventually, the day came. My leave was granted, and I boarded the plane home. The flight was long, and even though I had hours to think, all I could do was replay the events in my mind, try to make sense of it all. I thought about the woman I married, the woman who had been my partner, my confidant. What had happened to her? What had happened to us? It was like we were two strangers now, disconnected by a sea of unanswered questions and the wreckage of our past. When the plane touched down at Raleigh-Durham International Airport, I felt a rush of emotions I hadn't expected. There was excitement, yes, but also dread. What if she didn't want to see me? What if she had moved on? The thought of it sent a wave of nausea through me. But I couldn't back out now. I had to confront this, no matter how painful. I took a cab straight to the house we had bought together in Raleigh. It had always been our dream home, the place we had envisioned starting a family, growing old together. But now, as I stood in front of it, it felt like a stranger's house. The front door was locked, and there was no sign of Lily's car in the driveway. My heart sank. What was happening? Where was she? I didn't know what else to do, so I knocked. I stood there, my hand frozen mid-knock, feeling like an idiot, but I had to know. I had to hear it from her. I had to see her face and get the truth, even if it tore me apart. A few moments later, the door creaked open, and there she was, Lily. For a moment, neither of us said anything. We just stood there, staring at each other, like we were seeing each other for the first time. The woman I had known so well, the woman I had shared everything with, looked different. Her face was tired, worn. The spark that had always been there seemed dimmed. Lily, I began, my voice shaky. I came home because I need to know what happened. Why? Why did you do this? What happened to us? She hesitated, and for a split second, I thought she might say something, anything. But instead, she stepped aside, silently inviting me in. I walked into the house that was once full of life and laughter, but now felt cold and empty. I don't know if I can explain it, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't hold back the frustration. Explain what? You took everything from me, Lily. You took our savings. You took my heart. You just left. She sighed, her eyes welling up with tears. I didn't want to hurt you, Alex. But I couldn't keep living like that. I felt so alone. And I wasn't sure if I could keep waiting for you to come home. I thought maybe it would be easier this way. Her words hit me like a hammer. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But as I looked at her, I realized that maybe this wasn't about betrayal or cruelty. Maybe it was about pain. And maybe, just maybe, we were both lost. I didn't want to hurt you either. I said quietly, my voice cracking. But you have to understand, I didn't have a choice. I had to go. I had to be there. And now I feel like I've lost everything. She looked at me, her eyes filled with regret. Maybe we both have. For the first time in what felt like forever, we were face to face, trying to find the words to explain everything. But the truth was, neither of us had any easy answers. We were both lost in this mess we had created, and I wasn't sure how we would find our way out. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to give up on us. Not yet. Not without a fight. Lily's words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had long since burned out. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the silence between us thick and oppressive. I had so many questions, so much anger bubbling up inside of me. But for the first time in days, I was finally seeing her, not as a woman who had betrayed me, but as a person I once loved more than anything. There was pain in her eyes, and I could feel the weight of it. I had to know everything, the truth, even if it was hard to hear. I didn't want to hurt you, Alex, she said, her voice trembling. I felt trapped. The waiting, the uncertainty, it was suffocating me. I needed something more. I couldn't let her off the hook that easily. My emotions had been all over the place, but I was done with playing nice. You think I wasn't waiting too? Do you think it was easy for me to be out there every day, in the middle of a war, not knowing if I was ever going to see you again? It wasn't just you, Lily. I had my own demons to fight, my own struggles. She flinched at my words, and I immediately regretted them. But in that moment, I felt like I had to say everything I was thinking, even if it hurt. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I said, my voice softer now. She wiped away a tear and leaned back in her chair. It's just, I don't know what happened to us. You used to be everything I needed. But then I was alone here, trying to keep things together while you were gone, and it felt like we were slipping away from each other, one day at a time. I couldn't talk to you like I used to. The calls and messages were never enough. And then the financial pressure was building up. I had no choice but to make a decision. Draining our savings wasn't the right decision, Lily, I said, shaking my head. You could have talked to me. You could have waited until I got back. I would have done anything for you. I would have figured it out. She sniffled and looked down at her hands, folding them in her lap. I don't know. I thought I was helping myself. And then I started to feel like I had no way out. And then, when you didn't come home when I thought you would, I just snapped. I sent that text, and I couldn't take it back. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm so sorry. I let out a long breath. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that. I said, my voice thick with emotion. But I want to understand. I want to know everything. She nodded, wiping her eyes again. I thought if I ended things, it would make it easier. Maybe I wouldn't feel so alone. But all I did was make everything worse. There was the raw truth, the reality of what had been happening while I was gone, while I was fighting to stay alive and come back home. Lily had been fighting her own battles, and I hadn't been there for her. I hadn't seen it, hadn't understood the depth of her loneliness, her isolation. I stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the street outside. It was quiet, calm, but my mind was anything but. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make sense of it all. But I had to be better than that. I had to find a way forward. This couldn't be the end of us, could it? I don't know if we can fix this, I said, more to myself than to her. But I'm not ready to let it go. Not yet. Lily got up from the table and walked over to me, her eyes searching mine. What do you mean? I turned to face her. I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know what it's going to take. But I want to rebuild. I want to fix what we have. I don't care if it's going to be hard. I don't care if it takes years. I'm not walking away from this. She took a deep breath and nodded slowly. You mean want to try again? I don't know how, but I want to try, I said, feeling the weight of my own words. I know we've been through hell, but I still love you, Lily. I want to fight for us. I want to be the man I was before, the one you fell in love with. Her eyes softened, and I could see the hint of a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. But it was a sad smile, a broken smile. I've been so scared, Alex. Scared that we couldn't fix this. Scared that it was too late. It's never too late, I said, my voice steady. We just need to take it one step at a time. We stood there for a moment, not saying anything. The air between us was still charged, but there was a shift. We had been through the worst of it, and now we had a chance to rebuild. I wasn't sure how long it would take or what the road ahead would look like, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't walking away. Not from her. Not from us. I don't know if we can go back to the way things were, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But maybe we can start again. Maybe we can find a new way. Yeah, I said, my heart heavy with hope. We'll figure out. We both stood there, trying to process everything. I could feel the weight of the situation, but also the possibility of something new, something better. It wasn't going to be easy. Hell, it was going to be the hardest thing we'd ever done, but I was willing to try. We both were. Lily reached out and touched my arm gently. I don't deserve you, Alex. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I shook my head. We're both at fault here, Lily, but we can't change what's already happened. All we can do is move forward. Together. She nodded, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. It was going to take time. It was going to take work. But I was ready. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly home. Not just physically, but emotionally. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that if we both worked for it, we could rebuild what we had lost. And maybe, just maybe, it would be better than it was before. It's been 6 months since Lily and I had that conversation at the kitchen table. 6 months since we decided to rebuild, not just our relationship, but our lives. And in those 6 months, everything has changed. The road to healing hasn't been easy, but I can honestly say it's been worth every single step. At first, it felt like we were strangers again. I could see the hesitation in Lily's eyes whenever I would reach out to hold her hand or kiss her forehead. She was still scared. Scared that I might turn out to be the person I was during the war, the man she could barely connect with, the one who had been too lost in his own world to understand hers. But I was determined to show her I wasn't that man anymore. I owed it to her. I owed it to myself. I started taking time off from work, pushing aside the distractions. The days of mindlessly working to fill the emptiness were behind me. Lily and I began doing things together again. Small things, like taking evening walks in our neighborhood in Houston, just talking about anything and everything. We'd sit on the porch and watch the sunset. Sometimes in silence, sometimes with laughter filling the air. The little moments that used to mean everything to us slowly returned, and with them came the comfort that we had been missing for so long. But we also did the hard work, the real work. We went to therapy together. At first, I wasn't sure about it. I thought, how can a stranger help us fix what's broken? But slowly, as the therapist asked us difficult questions and pushed us to look deeper into ourselves, I began to see the value in it. We talked about everything, our fears, our past, our insecurities. We started understanding each other in ways we hadn't before, and that understanding became the foundation of rebuilding trust. The money issues were still a struggle. The savings Lily had drained in the midst of her despair were gone, and while we weren't bankrupt, we had to make some tough decisions. I took on extra freelance work, and we made sacrifices. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were doing it together. No secrets, no isolation, just teamwork. Lily was trying too. I could see it in the way she'd leave little notes for me on the kitchen counter, or how she'd send me random text messages saying, "I love you." Those small gestures, those little signs that she was still there, were like oxygen to my soul. They kept me grounded when things felt overwhelming. One evening, as we were sitting on the couch in the living room, Lily turned to me, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp beside us. There was a certain peace in her expression, a calmness I hadn't seen in a long time. She looked at me and smiled, genuinely without hesitation. "I think we're going to be okay, Alex," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. I could feel the lump in my throat as I nodded. "Yeah, I think we are." That moment, that simple exchange, felt like the culmination of everything we had worked for. I reached out, taking her hand in mine, and for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of what the future held. The past still haunted us, but we had learned to carry it with us, to not let it dictate our every move. The truth was, we weren't perfect. We still had our moments of doubt, our arguments, our moments of frustration, but I no longer saw them as insurmountable obstacles. I saw them as opportunities to keep growing, to keep learning. We weren't trying to go back to who we were before. It was about creating something new, something stronger, something that could weather the storms ahead. A month later, Lily and I took a weekend trip to Austin. Just the two of us. We rented a small cabin by the lake and spent the weekend hiking, talking, and reconnecting. It felt like the world had slowed down, like it was just us and the sounds of nature. We didn't need anything else. We didn't need grand gestures or promises we couldn't keep. We just needed each other. And in that cabin, under the vast Texan sky, I realized something. It wasn't the grand moments that defined us. It was the small, everyday decisions. The decision to keep going. The decision to forgive. The decision to love, even when it was hard. Those were the moments that mattered. As we drove back home, with the sun setting behind us and the radio playing softly, I knew we were ready. We were ready to take on whatever came next. Together, we had come through the storm, and we had emerged on the other side, not just surviving, but stronger. Our story wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was ours, and that was enough. And so, with Lily by my side, I knew one thing for sure. We would be okay, because sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most beautiful victories.